Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to today's Mediacorp webinar on effective storytelling on social media. This is a series of executive insight webinars that Mediacorp has been doing, and we are going to focus on social media today. My name is Diogo Martins. I'm the lead for Bloomr.SG. I have with me Chris Fan and Nuseir Yassin. Hi, Chris.
Good morning. Good morning, Diego, and good morning, everyone. I'm Chris. As Diego introduced me, I'm a creative strategist here at Mediacorp. And bringing my love of telling stories to my two kids at home every night, I help brands tell stories using all that Mediacorp can offer. So some of the amazing brands I've worked with is like AirAsia, Samsung, Huawei. So really looking forward to an exciting and fruitful morning with you this morning.
Hi, Nuseir. Good morning.
Hey guys, how are you?
Do you want to do a quick intro?
Yes. Nice to meet you, everybody. I wish I could see you in person, but for now I can't. My name is Nas from Nas Daily. My real name is Nuseir. I'm here to talk to you for really briefly for 10 minutes or so about effective social media strategies. It's the strategy that we used at Nas Daily and Nas Studios to get, to reach our objectives. And it's the strategy I believe every person should use really in their marketing campaigns. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Great, let's start. Since there's been a bunch of interest today, I thought we would start with a simple poll. So I would like you all to answer the questions when they pop up. Do you customize your social media content for each of your platforms, right? Do you do it all the time, only for certain campaigns, or do you do it never? So you have around 30 seconds to respond, and then I'll bring it up in a bit.
Wow, Diogo, you have 800 people here. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. So hopefully we got a bunch of questions in the questionnaire, right? Oh,
no,
okay.
I'm a bit scared.
Wow,
Starting
lots
to
of
see
response.
it go up. Okay. So for now, looks like it's going to be only for certain campaigns. That's good. We still have around 9 seconds to go. Yeah, I think only for certain campaigns is going to take it. That's great. So I think we can end the poll. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how you should always customize your content for all the platforms that you're working on, especially specializing storytelling and everything else that you do, right? So hopefully you get some good insights across the day. So to begin, of course, what are you going to get from this webinar? We're going to try to give you tools for effective storytelling, of course. We're going to give you examples of effective storytelling on social media, the key elements of a successful content strategy, and give you some inspiration for your next content experience, right? So a lot of you have worked with Mediacorp before on social media, right? So usually people tend to connect us more with TV and radio. But to be honest, the reality is that the content that we produce currently on social tends to go to more than 100 million reached accounts and other types of platforms on the internet, right? So what does that mean? It means that we're producing content for all of our brands that we currently have under our lineup at Mediacorp. We produce it to a lot of content for all of our clients as well, right? We have a vast digital network of partners. We have all of our TCA celebrities, our radio DJs, our news reporters, a lot of talent at Mediacorp, and for the past 3 years for Bloomr.SG. So since Nuseir and Chris presented themselves, I want to do a quick intro on myself. If you haven't noticed by my accent, I'm Portuguese, right? So that's why there's a rooster in the screen. So that's one of Portugal's main symbols, right? I've been a producer for a long time. I've worked at Mediacorp for the past 5 years doing digital content. And I had the opportunity to create the Bloomr.SG team 3 years ago, right? We tend to work with a lot of creators. We now have more than 50 in our lineup. We work with a lot of content producers for our digital content. We have network partners like Nas Daily and a few others. We work with a lot of influencers as well, yeah. But lately, we've also started to work on social with content creation, community management, social listening, and data analytics, right? So we have those two components of what Bloomr does. And what connects us is basically we're all storytellers working with Bloomr and Mediacorp, right? So to that, I think today we should focus mainly on how to tell a story, right? And how that story should be told on social for everyone that is using their content to talk about their brands, right? Okay, so I could start the conversation with great examples like Disney, great examples like Marvel, and how their complex storytelling works amazingly on social media, on a bunch of different platforms. But to be honest, that's way too complicated for anyone that is making content on social media. And Nuseir is gonna mention this, Chris is gonna mention this. The idea is we need to keep trying to do the things that we know, right? And we need to try to figure out what the audience actually wants. Currently, there's a big disconnect between what the audience expects from content on social and what marketers tend to give the audience on social, right? The audience wants to be engaged, they want to have good customer service, and they want the brands to be honest on social media, right? And marketers tend to give them ineffective content, very uncompelling storytelling, and sometimes because of the confused personality of the brand USPs on social, they tend to not give us a great story to move forward, right? So starting off immediately, one of our first big highlights and key elements for your social should be you always need to keep it simple, right? How simple, you might ask? I'm gonna give you a very cool example that started to appear on social media about a decade ago. I'm sure some of you already know this. So storytelling can be as simple as writing a great 2-sentence story. So this example is on horror stories. It appeared on Reddit. It became very popular on YouTube. And lately has started to appear as TV series in the United States. And I'm gonna read to you how simple that story can be. I begin tucking him into bed and he tells me, "Daddy, check for monsters under my bed." I look underneath for his amusement and see him, another him, under the bed, staring back at me, quivering and whispering, "Daddy, there's someone on my bed." Like that gives you shivers. But the idea is that if you create a video out of it, even better.
Bedtime, Alex.
Daddy, can you tuck me in?
Of course. Good night, Alex.
You forgot to look under the bed.
Of course. Sorry, buddy.
Daddy, there's somebody in my bed.
So this is a very good, simple story, right? Gives you the
Diogo,
chills.
what was that?
Now, imagine if a brand took this story and kept iterating it on social media, right? Imagine an IKEA or any home furnishing brand, because it's all done at home. It's a simple shoot. It would engage the audience and would keep having them be engaged and talking to their brand on social, right? So
Wow.
then the thinking is you keep that simple and you need to be platform minded. You need to understand that each platform has its language, has its strengths, right? So I can give you a simple example of something that one of our creators does on a regular basis. This is Minimuchi. She's one of our YouTubers at Bloomr. During CB, she got closed up at home. She's a home bug, right? She loves to dress up. She loves to have her own fantasy world. And you can see that on Instagram, the majority of her content that you see on the left is focusing on the costumes that she has, the world that she wants outside of her head, outside of her home, right? And she wants to get free from CB, right? So then the moment the day came that CB was lifted, of course, she made a Disney musical on everything that she wanted to do and all the things that she wanted to start doing again outside of home. But my point here is you can see that this is, to be honest, this is a team of 2 people. So it's Celine and Julian, her boyfriend. They shoot everything from home. Everything is extremely cheap to shoot. And the only thing that is extremely complicated is usually the editing style and sewing the costumes that she does, right? So it then gives you a perspective of if you know how to tell your story, you can be very effective at the way you're doing it. So To move forward, I would like you to also consider that all your content needs to be interactive with the audience that you're participating with. I will bring Chris in so he can start his part as well.
Thanks, Diogo. Really, the next big step in effective storytelling is to be interactive at every platform and consumer touchpoint where we can find our consumers. Because before any campaign becomes the talk of the town, the big question is we need to start interacting and talking to consumers with the content and brand. It's about what I say to as a brand, but how do I get to the other side of a conversation to interact and talk with me? And it's critical at this juncture, which we learn, is to identify the who, be it the person telling the story, the characters in the story, as well as the people who will be touched by the story. Because ultimately the goal of the story we're telling is to connect all the who's together. And one of the example is what Diogo is sharing here, AirAsia. They wanted Singaporeans to, well, change their travel habit from the usual long-term planning of a holiday trip to seeing the quick trip out of Singapore as an alternative to the weekend breaks and rest that many of us are yearning for, or holiday quickie. Learning about the who in this story becomes then very important. And our research showed that, well, most of the Singaporeans travel and inspired to travel because of word of mouth, social media, as well as television. But rather than jumping into a series of travel logs, we started to look for influencers who would have a reason to travel and take that break, just like the 71% of Singaporeans who are looking for that break and rest. And from there, allow these influencers to speak on behalf and to inspire Singaporeans to go on a holiday quickie. So how do we get this interaction going? By giving audience a reason to relate to the story and a reason to be part of the story. We created this reason by getting the protagonist of the story, one of our morning drive time DJs, Jeff, screaming for help to have friends to go out with. So between him and his co-host, the ladies challenged him to create a music video to solicit help from listeners and have enough shares that they will go out with him. We created an MV around cold jokes and entertainment trends, and this received 1,800 shares and giving Jeff the green light to go on a date with his friends. But next question is, where shall we go? And this is when all the audience starts to share their thoughts, be it going out on eating, hiking, traveling, and eventually even thinking of where should they go, like Ipoh from our friends from Malaysia. And this is a time where AirAsia, like a superhero, came in and say, hey, we want to make that happen. See you today at the airport and let us bring you somewhere. And much to the surprise, the next thing everybody knew, they were off to Ipoh. And this really delighted the listeners because they felt that they were part of the story and interacting with AirAsia and the DJs all together as one big family. Essentially, to keep the interaction going, we need to intentionally create all these triggers to get consumers to be interacting with us, the story, as well as the brand. Hey, Ricky, I love it that you're from Ipoh. Yes, I know it's a great place to be in. So instead of keeping the travelogues as a monologue, we constantly thought of different triggers to surprise listeners and give them a reason to interact with us, be it asking them, where should we go, what should we eat, and also bringing the entire morning drive time show live at the destinations that they were going, so that the listeners were also surprised that, hey, where are you going next? And those listening on radio could be surprised as well. And all this through an intensive and surprising series of back-to-back holidays across 8 weeks, doubling down on the idea of holiday quickies and aligning to what AirAsia wants to achieve. And building on what Diogo was sharing just now about being platform-minded, these contents were created with the platforms in mind, be it a social post or TVC on television or OTT or radio soundbites, engaging audiences at every possible consumer touchpoint. And you may think then, how do we manage to sustain this interactivity and content for 8 full weeks? Well, we kept listening to the conversations and travel social posts during the campaign, co-creating content together with the audience. For example, we picked up one of the comments in a social media saying that, wow, the sunrise is so beautiful. Well, then we got our influencers then create a social post on the sunrise, emphasizing and building on what the listeners want to look at. And this allows us to engage with content and topics that are constantly relevant to the listeners and trigger further conversations. This led to amazing engagement with consumers and a lot of positive vibe. Even when the DJs went for a trip, after the campaign, the listeners were wondering if they are on another holiday quickie. They were asking, is this holiday quickie version 2.0? And importantly for AirAsia, air ticket sales increased by nearly 25%, a huge achievement that we are so proud to be a part of. So keep it simple, be platform-minded, keep the interaction going by thinking and creating triggers to engage the audience. And meanwhile, if you have any questions on what I've just shared, just drop the question in the Q&A below. Next, building on what we have shared, I'm honored and excited. Yay, Nuseir to share. How do you keep engaging the audience?
My turn. Okay, yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Chris. This was great. Thank you, Diogo, for scaring the crap out of me in the morning. That was an amazing video. I've never seen it before. I should play that video in one of my talks too. Anyway, hi everybody. My name is Nas from Nas Daily. A lot of you probably know Nas Daily for the 1-minute videos that I made last year or 2 years ago about Singapore, about around the world on Facebook. I'm not here to talk necessarily about that. I'm here to talk about Nas Studios, which is a company that I'm building now in Singapore that has the same principles that I had when I started my Facebook journey. What is Nas Studios? Diogo, next. Look, at the end of the day, there's no other words to describe it. It's a media company. And when I was a kid, I didn't quite understand what the heck is media. Like people say media, media, content, content, media, content. I was like, it's just a video file. What is it? And so slowly but surely, I'm starting to realize what a media is. Like media is essentially the reason we can tell a story of a brand, of a person, of a government, of an entire continent only through media. And so for Nas Studios, we work with people such as actually Mount Elizabeth Hospital, one of them. We work with tourism boards. We work with governments. We work with tech startups. We work with normal product startups. And we try to tell their story via media. And we're also very lucky that we have 25 million people in our network across the internet, essentially. I like to say I have 25 million followers on the internet and 0 followers in real life. Anyway, the COVID-19 pandemic that happened, next slide. The COVID-19 pandemic, you know, I want to talk a little bit about that because that was very engaging. You know, it's an incredible tragedy that happened, but there's a lesson that I learned from it that I think I will not forget until the next 20 years or so. If you look at COVID-19, how did we learn about COVID-19? There was not one single entity that helped us understand COVID-19. No, you know, I learned how to wash my hands finally from a post that I saw by my friend. Then I learned what a coronavirus is from the WHO. Then I learned about the death rate from, CNN. Then I learned about something else from a social media content creator. There was a lot of distributed information, and unfortunately, some of them were fake, but a lot of them were real good information that I saw on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on TV, everywhere. So if COVID-19 was a company, they did effective marketing to tell the whole world about hygiene and how to actually make it work. Which gets me to my next point. You know, in the past, we were used to having sort of one big entity that can promise you 100 million followers, or one big entity that can promise you 100 million people on this one channel. The problem is the world is changing, and I don't think that kind of exists anymore, unless maybe you're Cristiano Ronaldo with 150 million followers. Most of the content is distributed, and that's what Mediacorp also realizes. That's why Bloomr exists, right? You need a little bit on TV, you need a little bit on social media, you need a little bit on the newspapers. From the Nas Studios side, we believe that instead of focusing on 100 million in one entity, let's find 100 individuals with 1 million each. The total number of followers is the same, but you've essentially created 100 different channels to channel your marketing campaign or your message or whatever. And that is a lot more effective. Now, the question is, why do you have to rely on humans? Why do you have to rely on, you know, that YouTuber that you mentioned, Diogo? Like, why do you have to rely on that person? Why can't you just put it from your website or from your Facebook page, your, let's say, company Facebook page, and call it a day? The problem is social media. It's not a problem. It's actually, the reality is social media is the ultimate definition of a human. I mean, think about it, right? You open your Facebook, you scroll, okay, a post from your mom, a post from your dad, a post from your friend, another post from this, and then a random post from some random company in Indonesia. Like, you don't necessarily care about it. It's an inanimate object. You care about humans when you are on a social media platform. It's different for TV, but social media is a lot more, hey, I know you, I like you, I love you. This is the, or I hate you. This is the reason why I didn't call it NAS Daily. I didn't call it Travel Daily or Videos Daily. I called it NAS Daily. NAS means humans. So when I say NAS Studios, it means human studios. We make videos about humans by humans, and we find that to be a lot more effective from a data perspective as well. And also, of course, I don't want to, you know, definitely keep it simple, as Chris said, and as Diogo said. It's probably the most important point in this entire day. By the way, if you have any questions, ask them in the chat below so that we can answer them when we have a fireside chat after.
In the end, yeah.
So definitely use the chat or make friends. Look, there's a very famous saying that said, death by 1,000 cuts. And I thought that was amazing because I'm dying too by 1,000 problems in my life. But also on the opposite side, you can only affect change as a brand or as a marketing campaign by 1,000 uploads. So the days of making this one big video that costs you $1 million and putting it somewhere and expecting change to happen, it's not gonna happen. So I wanna give you a case study, for example, from one of our clients. It was a University of the People. It's an online school. And they said, hey, we wanna tell the world about how cool our online university is. And we said, look, forget making one video and putting it on your social or whatever. Let us make 15 videos about 15 humans in 5 different continents, right? So one person in Utah, another person in Los Angeles, another person in West Africa, Guinea, another person in Vietnam, another person in Singapore. Let us find these humans and let us create a video about the story of these humans, because this content is built for social media. You see one video, okay, you forget about it. The next day, I'm showing you another student and another student, another student, until it is ingrained in your brain that University of the People is a great place to get an education based on 15 humans that told me so on social media. And that was a success. And that campaign worked out. There's one last point I want to make. And it's actually, I'm the most proud of that point. Look, we all speak English. Singapore is big on English and we love English. The reality is, I didn't realize it, is how few people in the world speak English. It's insane, right? Like, English is not as big in Vietnam as it is in Singapore, for example, and neither is it in my village back in Israel. So we had another client called Lark. It's a technology startup that helps you do telecommunication and essentially kind of like Slack, but I think it's better. And we told them, look, instead of making this one video to get people to use your software in English, you should definitely let us localize it for you. So we make one version of the same video in Vietnamese, another version of the same video in Bahasa, another in Arabic, another in Spanish, in every possible language, and we'll upload it to these specific countries. And you know what? That is a lot more effective and a lot more engaging than just doing it in English. And this is not a unique idea. The Singapore government does that too. Last month, I got a Budget 2020 book. And I opened the first few pages. It was in English, great. And then Chinese, and then Malay, and then like 4 different languages. I was pleasantly surprised, because that is how you get to someone's heart. And actually, I want to put a quote here by Nelson Mandela, which is so relevant. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, like let's say English to me, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart. So if Diogo right now starts speaking Arabic to me, I'm gonna like I'm going to start shivering because it's directly going to go to my heart. And now every video we make on Nas Daily or Nas Studios, we translate to 7 languages. So it gets to every single person's heart. The last point is, look, you want to translate videos, you want to make many of them, you want to find 100 individuals, you want to create campaigns about things and all that stuff. The only way you can do this is if you don't spend 6 months on one video. Those days of spending 6 months on one campaign should be dead. You know, the days of putting $1 million into one thing that I'm going to watch on my phone, that's the past. The future is you should make your videos, you should make your marketing campaign in less than a week. Speed is the #1 reason Nas Daily succeeded. It was called daily, so every day you have to make a video. Similarly, for Nas Studios, for the clients, we do it very, very fast. Our color correction is not as good, but nobody cares. Our audio is not as good, but nobody cares. You know, on social media, you can afford to have a lower quality, so less beautiful visuals, more beautiful story. And we believe that is the future of social media. So you must have speed in any marketing campaign you do. That's it. I took too much of your time. If you have any questions, definitely ask them in the chat. Thank you guys for inviting me to talk about some of the things we talk about every day.
Thank you, Nuseir. Thank you, Chris, as well. Like Nuseir said, you can ask us any questions in the chat. Be sure to use as well the hashtag MPL Executive Insights if you want to tell us something on social on the talk as well. Actually, Nuseir, my favorite day would be when you can speak in Arabic, I speak in Portuguese, Chris speaks in Chinese, and we all understand each other. Right? That would be the ideal moment. So if you've all been paying attention, right, the idea is to keep your content as simple as possible, be platform minded to the language that each platform has, to be interactive, use your triggers, be engaging, relevant, human, and of course fast. But I still think that there's something missing to all of this, right? Because it's social media. So social media tends to be a very different way of seeing content compared to, for example, a movie or a book, which is a finite story most of the time, right? But social media is a never-ending story. It keeps going, right? So for you to be good at your content, you always need to start by evaluating your audience and knowing what they want and what they can get used to watching as your content, right? So then you can make your content according to those parameters, to your business hopes, right? And hopefully you can also start to listen, analyze, and comment with your listeners and your audience just to make the best possible content that you can do. And you need to start iterating it. You need to start becoming better at what you're doing. Nuseir didn't start as the best storyteller in the world. Our YouTubers don't start as the best storytellers in the world. I can tell you for a fact that I was a terrible storyteller in the beginning, and it's taken me more than a decade to start to understand and perfect everything that I do. So you can see from a YouTuber's perspective, in Singapore, we tend to only remember the great Singaporean YouTubers by the content that they make currently. So it's all very sophisticated. You can see it in the now image. It's sophisticated, it's TV quality, it's amazingly done, it's for big brands, and it's always amazing. But if you go back 8 years, it was like Minimuchi. They were shooting at home, they were kids, they were starting to learn how to tell their stories. They slowly started to become slightly better. 4 years, 3 years ago, they started to change their narrative, that they started to see that the content on social media was evolving into better storytelling, and now they're all very good at what they do. So if you can take our major key takeaways for today, it's always keep your content simple. Remember the language of the platforms you're using. That was clearly noted by Chris and Nuseir, right? Be interactive with your audience. Don't just make content and then leave it dead on social media. Use the triggers so you can have them come back to you and talk to you and give you feedback on what you're doing. Be engaging, be human, be relevant, make the best possible content that a human being would want to communicate and associate with. Social media needs to be social, right? Everything else that you do needs to be social. And last but not least, you need to iterate your content, become a better storyteller. And if you use everything that we've been talking about, you will become an effective storyteller. I'm going to show you a last example that basically incorporates all of this into a very quick 30 seconds that a brand used perfectly also a long time ago on social media. Hopefully some of you have seen it. I'm going to show you now.
Smarter to travel in groups. Take the bus. The lane.
So simple story, they produced 4 different videos. They were very successful on social media. It went to TV because of that success. And it was very valuable for the brand due to a lot of conversations that were started by the people that were watching it. And last but not least, I have to mention, of course, you don't have to walk alone in your content journey. You can come to us, you can come to Bloomr, you can come to our network partners like Nas Daily and a lot of others. We are all storytellers. We are all doing very different types of stories in the type of platforms that we use. Mediacorp as well, we do for TV, right? So social media is social, but everything that we do at the company is also social. So there's always that valuable feedback and that human interaction that you need to guide you in the conversation moving forward. So now you have the opportunity to ask us as many questions as you can, and the 3 of us will try to respond and try to have a quick chat on everything that you're doing. So,
nice. Diogo, can I take the first question? I highlighted already.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Okay. Apparently there are 62 questions, so impossible to answer. But there's one said, how do you educate your clients on success metrics? How much would you get them to balance between sales/leads generated by the campaign versus branding awareness? You know, I have to say this, right? It's so easy because Facebook counts the first 3 seconds as a view, right? It's so easy for you to go and say, okay, I'm gonna go buy 1 million views, and that's it. It's just views. Now you have 1 million people, but in reality, it's not necessarily 1 million people. Everyone in the media industry kind of understand that no one really knows what is a real view. No one really knows what is branding awareness and what is. There's a famous saying that said, I know for a fact half my marketing budget is wasted. I just don't know which half. That's the crazy thing about marketing and social media. So if I would tell the client is this, don't just look at the views, look at the number of comments, look at the percentage of comments to views, look at the percentage, the ratio of likes to views. Those are very important. And I think slowly but surely, you're gonna wanna start making more performance marketing. So you're gonna wanna do half of it for branding, just put your logo somewhere on a car and call it branding. And the other half on like, okay, I need sales with this, help me track it with a Facebook pixel or whatever. Social media is becoming much, much, much better at telling you your return on investment. And I think in the next few years, it'll become kind of standard. But until then, you gotta educate yourself and go by intuition, essentially.
Actually, I think, Nuseir, you have a great point in the difference between performance marketing and the organic and influential marketing that each brand needs to do on their platforms, right? Because performance marketing is very targeted, it's very specific, it's ROI dependent, right, most of the time. But the organic content, the idea is that you keep having those conversations, like you mentioned. You keep having that organic conversation with your audience. You cannot change your content to be better if people are not talking to you. And performance marketing, it tends to not be as good at giving you valuable feedback, valuable comments on the way that it's made, because it's very KPI specific, right?
Yes.
So thank you for that. Chris, do you want to expand?
And actually building on that, I think there were a lot of questions asking about how do we create triggers? Is it about how people feel? How do we know what audience wants? And what if it's a new brand without much data? And I think I really love what Nuseir was sharing just now, which was essentially being humans, telling human stories. Imagine yourself new in a neighborhood, new in a community. How do you start conversations? It's really just trying things out, trying a content out that represents you as a brand, as a human, and then starting to continue the conversation, be iterative. Your first one may not work, your second one may not work, but let's continue doing it, keeping it simple and keeping the story going, and not just stop with one campaign-focused story. Because as you keep it iterative, that's when you start to gather data, what people actually want, what people actually are looking for, and how people respond. And sometimes actually looking for people out there to just talk to and listening to them. Which actually is a good question to Nuseir, like how do you actually find out what content do you actually want to build?
Do I actually want to create for the brand?
For a brand?
Can I add something? So not just the content that you want to build for a brand, but imagine it's a B2B brand rather than just a general B2C consumer brand, right?
So the beauty of NAS Studios is that we have so far generated over 1,300 videos or so. So we've created 1,300 videos and we put them on the internet and we got feedback in return. So we are able, with the help of data and common sense, not AI, not ML, none of that, just common sense, we can tell which videos perform well on social media and which videos do not. So this institutional knowledge becomes more and more handy. I can only imagine what Mediacorp has in terms of data, right? You have data on TV, data on social media, data on whatever. So for me, I know that if I make a video about, let's say, environmentalism, that is a relevant topic for the world. So if you can try to position a brand, talk about their environmental sort of initiatives, that gives a lift to the entire brand. And also, you know, I want to answer this question by Elaine. It says, B2B tech brands' contents tend to be formal and sometimes boring. What is the best way to humanize contents for B2B? Look, if there's one thing I learned from being alive is that we like to join groups. We're like a herd. We like to join herds. So companies do the same thing, right? If another company is doing something, I'm going to do the same thing the other company is doing because I don't want to be an outlier. I'm too scared of the negative feedback for my brand. And so I'm seeing a lot of corporate videos that are look the same, feel the same, have the same message, and at some point they just go over your head. And so if you're a B2B brand, first of all, you have to have a marketing team that is not scared. So for example, I like the marketing team at like Parkway Pantai, like Serene, she's actually here. Like she's not scared. Like she can try anything, you know, and it's very sensitive to hospital, but she's very determined to try new things. And I think that's what B2B brands need to do. And if someone comes to us saying, I want to try new things, then we're gonna experiment. We're not gonna get negative feedback. We're gonna experiment as much as possible. And one of these experiments is gonna actually work out, and that'll define your brand for the next 5, 10 years or whatever.
And if I can, right? We have the hashtag MPL Executive Insights. The conversation can keep going on social media. The idea is that we will also collate all of those questions, and I will share it with Chris and Nuseir, and they can answer you in the future if we cannot talk about everything today. So I'm gonna grab a bunch of different questions that are gonna be compressed into a single. Okay, one of them is video might not be the solution that a brand needs, correct? The issue is that the majority of social media platforms favor video. So it then becomes a problem if you're not considering that for what you're doing. Then the other notice that people are giving on the Q&A is as well that video tends to be expensive. I gave you extremely simple and extremely cheap examples. Nuseir, I'm sure when he produces his content, the budget is always a concern. Chris, definitely always a concern. So it's always considering how much money you have, the type of story that you want to tell, how simple it is, and what platform you're going to use. So I just mentioned Instagram and YouTube, but a lot of you are asking on TikTok, some of you asked on LinkedIn, other platforms. So I want to expand a little bit more on how you create narratives for different types of platforms. Everyone is talking about TikTok now. Unfortunately, most marketers still don't know how to monetize it or how to actually use it for their benefit. But I want you to try to expand a bit, because I know that you've also created your TikTok account, if I'm sure, right? And Mediacorp is also starting. No, not you. We're starting to create a bunch of different TikTok accounts, but we're doing it organically. So it's not looking to find money to build on it. It's literally to communicate the way that people are watching it on the platform. So I'd like you to expand, both Nuseir and Chris, on the platform, how you're making the content. And everyone is asking for that little nugget of information. Oh yeah, your video needs to have clickbait titles, or it needs to be this or that. I want you to expand.
You want to go?
Yeah.
Sorry, could you repeat the question again? Sorry, didn't catch that.
Bearing in mind the platforms, right? Everyone thinks that most marketers that go to seminars or any type of webinar or conversation, they get, oh, you need to create a clickbait title for your product on Facebook or YouTube. You need to make a 30-second video and you need to make sure that the first 5 seconds are this or that. On TikTok, you need to do a crazy dance or you need to use a certain song, and they keep forgetting that they need to tell a story on the content that they're producing. So I want to try to pinpoint what you think that most marketers need to think about when they're doing it.
I think number one is really thinking about what you're trying to tell the story, and then the consumer habit at the different platforms. I mean, we do know 6 seconds was working really well at certain platforms. GIFs are working on certain platforms, because at the end of the day, the story, who we are, what we're trying to say as a human, as a brand, then can translate into different platforms. So take, for example, the AirAsia campaign. We knew that we needed huge awareness of the campaign. So we didn't put the entire video footage onto television. We wanted to just cut it into 10, 15 seconds commercials to create the awareness for people to watch it on the other platforms where we knew people were consuming on a on-demand basis, which is OTT or YouTube. So, and then we use social media to just create the interaction and engagement. It wasn't just a full-blown story there per se for that campaign, but it's more of just creating the engagement platform that we needed for the brand, between the brand and consumers, to understand what they're really thinking about. So I think even though the whole story was about holiday quickies or whatever story that the brand is trying to talk about, at the end of the day, it's really conscious of what are people doing at the different platforms and aligning to it. It's just like I wouldn't go to a neighbor and shove something which the person doesn't want to eat. I think about what the person wants and then continue from there. Which actually answers the other question about the balance between TV and social media, because I think each platform are different consumer points with different consumer behavior, and this is constantly shifting. And we constantly need to be aware of what people are doing on these platforms and engaging them respectively.
I want to add a bit more to that, to what Chris said. Actually, before I do that, I said a comment earlier saying, you know, I think in the future, it's going to be that even TV channels, you don't have to spend $1 million on a marketing campaign for a TV channel. Even that quick and dirty content can still go on TV, by the way. So when
you
we talk
definitely
about
don't need to spend $1 million on Mediacorp to make your content.
Yes.
So that's an assurance that we can give.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Another thing, look, I actually just joined TikTok right here. See, it's working quite well, but we believe that the main channel for us is Facebook, because Facebook has a lot of insights that is important for you, and a lot of like, it's a very mature platform. So you get Instagram, you get Facebook at the same time, like two birds in one stone. So that's why we put our videos on Facebook, but I think TikTok could become something as well in the future. I want to add a comment on what you said about clickbait. I agree with you. You don't put like, you know, sexually suggestive stuff in the thumbnail. Don't put like violence suggesting things in the thumbnail, like, oh, I punched him in the face. You know, you don't have to do that. But at the same time, clickbait is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Clickbait just has a bad aura against it. Like, I clickbait all the time. So I'll tell you a clickbait that I did about Singapore, okay? It's right here. It's called, "This is made of pee," right? And it's me drinking water. Like, that is by definition a click. What is made of pee? Is he drinking pee? But in that, you just want to get the people's attention so that you can tell them, oh, new water is actually filtered water, is actually clean water that's from the sewage. Eventually, that statement is correct. This is made of pee, theoretically, but there's a lot more to it. So a clickbait, I would say, is a way to get the people in without compromising your values. So
you need to follow through with great story, right?
Yes, the story has to match the clickbait. So yeah, if it was something about something else. Last point is, when we make a video right now for our brands and for our clients, we help them put it on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on TV if they want to. And so it's across the whole channels. Really, the only difference, think about it, it's a human watching the video in every single platform. It's the same human on Instagram, the same on TikTok, the same on TV. They're different ages, but it's a human. So what we do is we just change the length and the format. That's it. So for TikTok, we make it super vertical. For Instagram, we make it super vertical. For Facebook, we make it square. For YouTube, we make it landscape. That's it. It's very simple to be on many different platforms if you know exactly what the platform demands in terms of format and length.
Okay. I think I can wrap it up unless anyone has a really burning question. So just to iterate a few points, do you want to say anything else to leave us, Nuseir and Chris?
I said a lot. Thank you guys for listening. You only talked for 1 minute. Today I talked for 15 minutes or so.
Then we give Chris the floor to say something, and I'll finish up.
It's simple. I think I really took away from this whole entire this entire seminar about keeping it simple and being human. And I think as long as we keep it simple, dare to try as a human being, and keep the stories real, hey, let's just go for it.
Yeah, because especially during COVID, we've all stayed at home. It's tough to talk to each other, but if you keep talking to your audience, keep talking to your friends, even the first people that you need to, your family that you need to talk to, you will feel that there's that bond that is created with the stories that you tell, right? We started off telling stories on the campfire, explaining what the hunt was during that day. It's just evolved slightly. It just went from the campfire to your phone and social media and every other platform, right? So we need to concentrate on just being human, telling our stories. Just to close you off, I'm gonna give you a last poll that you can tell us. So this is basically a cue. Do you think that we had a good talk? Do you know now how to create quick, strong narratives on social to better resonate with your audience? Do you agree, strongly agree? Are you neutral? Do you disagree? So you have around 20 seconds now to tell us.
Are you going to share the results with everybody?
I will.
You will? Oh my God. What if everybody strongly disagrees?
No, we are 1/4 strongly agree and around 60% agree, which is very good.
Good.
If the strongly agree wants to win, then you just keep clicking.
No stress, man. My boss is watching right now.
But I think we covered a lot of points that people can use to create their stories. So it's just a question of starting at some point. Journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And daring to try and daring to fail, right? And just continue to just try and create those stories.
Okay, ending the poll. So the agrees won it, 62%. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you get as much from this as we got as well. Do join us in the first week of July. We will have 2 other webinars, one talking on social media trends. We're going to focus on YouTube and TikTok. So a lot of your questions that Nuseir and Chris answered today will also be focusing more on trends on that day. And we will talk about engaging your social first parents, millennials, and the youth in the new normal that exists in Singapore. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. And thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Keep safe,
Thank you,
everyone.
Diogo. Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Take care.